Hey, Kris.
Hey, Drew.
Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast?
Why, yes, I have.
When we were trying to get this podcast off the ground, we had a lot of questions. Like, how do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all the apps people like to listen to? How do we make money podcasting? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. And best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now just by reading this ad.
Right now?
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now?
That means if you want to get a podcast going and make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start. Join me and Kris and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. We can't wait to hear your podcast.
What makes you afraid? Some of All Fear lives at the crossroads between our greatest phobias and the horror movies we love to experience. Part pop culture and part psychology. It's time to find out why we're all so scared of the dark.
I'm still snarfing. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I've completely fallen off the wagon now.
It's not my fault. Even though you will blame me.
I won't blame you.
No,
It's not your fault.
Thank you. You all
There was
heard
no
that.
wagon.
You all heard that.
I never got on the wagon in the first place. And so in order to fall off the wagon, you have to get on the wagon first. And my January sober month has absolutely just has not happened. So the Bears made the playoffs. There's lots of cool shows coming up. There's no way that I'm not going to have a few drinks here and there. So I decided to abandon the concept of getting on the wagon.
I'm very proud of you for finally admitting it. It's the first step to true recovery.
It was a done deal before it started. Surprise, surprise. So I'm sitting here with my I've got my Manhattan, got my Rebel Yell whiskey. I've got I got some new bitters to put in my Manhattan, and I'm happy. It's good. What are you drinking?
All is well. Well, I have two mugs tonight. One is a mug of elegant chai tea that says keep calm and drink coffee on the outside. And the other is a mug cake, my new best friend.
None of those have alcohol in them.
No, zero alcohol.
You did have some
Okay.
earlier, though.
I had some rosé
You had a
wine.
half a glass of rosé.
I'm okay with that. That's okay. That's fine.
How dare you lush.
I know. Please.
You're just a dirty, dirty drunk. So we completed an episode. We got through episode 1.
And thank you for listening if you did, because we did about 10 times ourselves and we know how rough it was.
Yeah, it was
It was
rough. It was on the rougher side.
It's okay.
It's okay. We got through it though. We broke our cherry.
You gotta fall down to learn.
Broke our podcast cherry. So
That's right.
you know, we definitely went back and went, oh shit, we didn't say this and we didn't include this, and
Well,
we got a little like
When you
confused
put it
over here.
When you put it in a sex metaphor, they'll have to come back in 20 years before we're any good.
True, absolutely true. You're never any good for the first 10 years at least.
Please.
So we've got a ways to go before this is going to turn into to something worth listening to, right? But I'm very excited about episode 2. I think we both were so excited about this episode compared to the last episode.
Yeah.
That we've only gone what has it been 2 days since we recorded the first one, and we're like, oh my gosh, this one's going to be so much better. I'm so excited.
Well, because you listen to it and you see all the holes in it, and then people give you feedback, and it's really relevant. You go, oh, I want to do that better, and so you want to kind of jump back on it.
Well, not just that, but I think our topic for this one is so much better than our first one.
And there's a lot more.
Not that there was anything
connection.
wrong with the first one, but this one is much more focused. It's much more.
Darkness was so broad.
It was a broad one, And I didn't get to bring up, I'm a religion major, I'm a theology major.
Right.
I didn't bring up light and dark in religion at all. Like I didn't talk
The
about any of
significance
those.
of that.
Yeah, there was so many things that I missed. And honestly, it's about, we want to tie in horror movies, and literally I could not think of like a horror movie to land on.
Well, you kind of blanked, or you just went across the spectrum.
I went through so many of them. We talked about 30 Days of Night, we talked about Blair Witch Project and all those, but this phobia, I've got one movie that we are going to we're gonna break it down.
You made me watch it, y'all.
Yeah, I'm gonna
It's
make her watch.
actually pretty good.
I'm gonna make her watch every movie that we focus on, because that's my goal. My goal is, in this podcast, we're gonna talk about the phobia, and then we're gonna break down one specific movie. We might talk about a few other movies, as well, mixed in, but it's gonna be focused on one movie the majority of the time, so we can really dive in and analyze a specific movie. I think that'll be a lot more fun, because that way you and I can watch it. We can kind of absorb it, and soak it in, and then we can.
Give me any time to soak this one in. This one was crazy.
I know, we just finished watching it
Hitchcock.
like 10 minutes ago.
It was a good idea, though. This one, being the second one, it's also very relatable personally. So as soon as I found out that this was the topic, I kind of was like, oh, crap, I can tell so many stories about this.
Yeah, both of us have some personal stuff connected to this phobia, so that'll be a fun one.
Yeah.
So I'm Drew, and this is my wife, Kris.
Hello.
I know we're 5 minutes in already, but I just wanted to give a quick introduction. We are married. We are doing a podcast called Some of All Fear, and Kris is in the mental health field, and she has some highfalutin fancy degrees in that field, and I have a background in history and religion, and I'm a big horror movie nerd, and so we're gonna dive right in. Are we gonna dive right into the phobia, or do you have something else planned for us?
No, I have something else. I thought we would play a game because.
Oh, a game!
A game!
I'm so excited.
Oh, yippee! Because I know how much you love game shows and Jeopardy, and you're very competitive and brilliant. And so any chance I get...
So brilliant. Keep telling. Come on, keep talking.
Any chance I get to stump my husband, I am 100% going to take advantage of. So
you think you're going to stump me?
I hope I'm going to stump you.
You think you're going to step up? You're going to step up to the streets? You're going to step up to me?
I was hoping that this would not fast become a confrontation.
This is quickly becoming a confrontation.
But yes, yeah, I am going to stump you. And
bring it on, man.
I'm going to stump you, and you're going to learn something.
Bring it on.
Yeah. Okay. So this is how the game works. It's called What the Fear? And
Did you make this game up?
I totally did.
I like it.
It's called What the Fear? And it's a game show.
Do you have to say it like that?
No, but I have...
Can we? Can we say it like that every time?
Sure.
Please?
Sure.
Say it again.
What the fear? You say it now.
What the fear?
There you go. Okay, you have to say it like that.
I like it.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a phobia, and you have to tell me what that is a fear of, okay? So I'm going to give you...
And these are probably not ones that we're going to address, or they might come up at some point later on.
They might come up tangentially later on, but for the most part, I have picked ones for this game show that are not on our list. So they should be unfamiliar to you, but with how much you know about root words, I wouldn't be surprised if you got a couple of them. So let's see how much you can piss me off.
All right, let's go. Bring it on. Bring it on.
Okay. So the first one, chiclelophobia.
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 Can I get spellings?
Yeah. Would you like to buy a vowel?
Can you use it in a sentence?
Okay, I'll give you the spelling. I'm not going to use it in a sentence. I can barely say the word once. Okay, Chiclelo phobia. Chiclelophobia.
The fear of water. The fear of being underwater. Damn, that was loud.
I know.
You just blew everybody's eardrums out.
I know, I'm sorry.
That was really loud. The sound, it picks up sound really easily.
I am sorry, everyone. No, that is wrong. The correct answer is the fear of chewing gum.
Huh. Oh, that makes sense. Like chiclets. You know, I almost went there. I almost went there too. Damn it.
I thought
I
you
almost went there.
Yes, I'm one for one.
I don't even know why I went with water, except for I was thinking something about Chicago and the root as being some Indian word related to marshland or water or something. I don't know.
You were so off.
Way off. I'm two whiskeys deep now. All right, I'm off the wagon.
You're never on the wagon. So guess which celebrity has a fear of chewing gum? Oprah.
Really?
Oprah has such an extreme fear of chewing gum that she forbids it anywhere near her studio. And she's gone so far as to become so enraged at the sight of it that someone had left a piece of chewing gum around, that she threw the dinner plate that it was on against the wall.
Well, whatever planet she's from, like I parked her car once in when I was valet parking.
Oh, this is one of
cars.
Those fake stories.
This is a true story.
No, it's a true story.
Her driver pulled up, a bunch of her ladies got out, and they all went into lunch at a restaurant I was working at in Chicago, and they gave us $100 tip just to tell them where to park, which was pretty cool. But I swear to you, her head barely fit through the door. I don't know what planet she's from, but people should not have heads that big. Oprah's head is, there are other planets revolving around it. There's something wrong with that.
People are listening right
I'm just saying. Nothing. She was
now we'll never be on the O network.
She was a very nice lady, but giant melon. All right, what's the next one?
You are harshly judgmental too.
Are we just doing one, or are we doing multiple?
No, I have 3 for you. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's keep going now.
Okay. The next one. Omeliatrophobia.
Spell it, please.
Omeliatrophobia. OMELIATRO phobia. What the fear is this? I don't know why you like that so much.
Omeliatrophobia.
Omeliatrophobia. Omeliatrophobia.
Oh man, the fear of
Omeliatrophobia.
The fear of...
Or omeliatrophobia.
And it starts with an O, right? Not an A?
O.
Omelia. Gosh, I don't know. The fear of hearing weird noises.
No, that's very wrong.
I had a feeling it probably was.
I didn't want to blow everybody's ears out. No, this is the fear of talking food. Anthropomorphized food.
Of food talking.
Yeah.
So if somebody like taking their like in that
like VeggieTales.
Like in that scene in How I Met Your Mother where she makes her breakfast sandwich talk.
God, yes, I know exactly what scene. We watched that way too much. So actually, Kevin Bacon says that wife Kira Sedgwick has a terrifying fear of anthropomorphized food. Her phobia is so bad that if she sees a commercial with anthropomorphized food, she gets up and immediately leaves.
So would like Mr. Peanut be a problem?
Yes, anthropomorphized food.
So any sort of anthropomorphized
food.
So any food talking.
Anthropomorphized food. Yeah.
That's
correct.
That's quite funny. All right, let's get to the last one.
Okay.
Let's move this this ship along here.
All right. This one, if you don't get, I'll be surprised. Ready? Ovophobia.
Ovophobia. The fear of sperm?
Oh, you're so close. The fear of eggs.
Oh, see,
you were
I knew.
in the vicinity. Not necessarily like ovary eggs, but
just eggs in general.
Eggs in general.
Eggs in general. That makes sense. I was right in the same ballpark. I was thinking ovaries and eggs. And
that was a really good attempt. I'll give you that. So this phobia,
spermophobia or something like that would probably be
spermatophobia.
Pretty similar, yeah.
So this phobia hits really close to home with our director for our
the movie later
today,
on,
yes,
that we haven't announced yet.
Yeah, I keep looking at my phone, and so I keep getting distracted.
We haven't talked about it yet. Well, you did kind of give it away already, but
I did. Okay. Alfred Hitchcock was really terrified of eggs. He was once quoted as saying,
he looked like an egg, so maybe that was the problem.
He was once quoted as saying, "That white round thing without any holes. Have you ever seen anything more revolting than an egg yolk breaking and spilling its yellow liquid?"
Well, as we will discuss later on, Hitchcock had some severe pathological, psychological problems.
He had some stuff going on.
I think overall, in general.
Yeah, he had some stuff going on.
So, all right. Wonderful game. Thank you.
Thanks for playing.
What was the title of it again?
What the Fear?
I like it. I hope it's a recurring segment on the show. It better be.
Only if fans request it.
Fans? All 3 of them?
Mm-hmm.
All 2.5 of them? Let's talk about our phobia today. Let's talk about our topic.
Okay.
And our topic today is acrophobia, which is the fear of heights. Also a very common fear, but one that I think is not quite as crazy broad as the one we talked about in the first episode. It comes from the Greek word akron, and akron means a peak or summit or edge, height. It has to do with kind of that peering over, being on the edge, being up at the tallest pinnacle. So that's our etymology of the word, and why don't you explain to us a little bit more about what this phobia is and what it's all about?
Well, so technically it's the fear of high places and the physical sensations that occur as a result of them. It's one of the specific phobias under space and motion discomfort, and it's one of the phobias that I'm personally most comfortable with.
Comfortable with because you're uncomfortable with.
Because I'm so uncomfortable with it. There's this really awkward story of a 4th of July.
Hold on, wait, let's not get there yet.
Oh,
let's dig into the phobia first before we get into it, because we have a couple of really good personal anecdotes to share. But let's talk a little bit more about what the phobia entails and like what it is before we get into like the personal stuff.
Thanks for keeping me on track, man.
I'm trying.
You're doing good. Okay, so approximately 2 to 5% of the population struggles with a specific phobic level fear of heights. It's that hyperreaction to that normal fear response, learned or otherwise. And as we find out with the fear of heights, it's not like other fears where it develops early on. Generally, we actually see it worsen later in life when most phobias would lessen because the adrenal response isn't as refined when you get older.
You were telling me yesterday that actually it gets worse and worse, like even as people get into elderly years, it gets much more pronounced.
Yeah. Like when we look at the fear of heights as it develops, we see kids, infants are very curious about ledges. Once they learn to notice them, once their depth perception grows, and they learn to notice them, they're actually very curious about ledges. They're not displaying fearful behaviors. So something like an event that caused a fall from a height could potentially scar them and give them that, the base of that fear. But we find that just like most fears, there's part biology and part, experience or environment that plays.
I mean, I noticed with our boys that when they were little, when they're that 2, 3, 4-year-old, and you take them to the park and the jungle gym, they They dart up to the top of everything, and you're just like, holy shit! Like, get down from there! Like, you're gonna fall. You're gonna eat it. You're gonna land on your face. You know, and they're just up there. Blah, blah, blah. They don't care. They have no idea what that means. You know, and I think that maybe that is, you know, once you get it's funny. I think I wonder how many times that develops at that age when they fall from a higher spot and they realize, oh, there's danger up here. You know, this is not a good thing to be up at this high level because I could fall and hurt myself.
Right. And I can't remember any one time except maybe this might have something to do with it in my life, how it originated.
Well, let's let everybody know you have a pretty hardcore fear of heights.
I do.
So beyond, and I would say definitely beyond like your normal fear. Like I would say I would be in the camp of I'm not a big fan of heights. I don't particularly like heights. I get a little bit of these symptoms that come with acrophobia when I get to certain places or stand on the edge of high places. You, however, have a panic attack level kind of fear of heights, which possibly could be diagnosed. However, and this is something we were talking about before. 5% of the population has a fear of heights. That's clinical. That means they've gone somewhere. They've actually been diagnosed. They have that clinical.
They meet specific criteria for duration, frequency, and intensity.
There are probably a lot of people, possibly yourself included, that could be included in that percent probably in a higher percentage, but that never go in and get treated or anything because you just avoid high places. You avoid heights, right?
Well, yeah, yes and no. Sometimes I can't, and when I can't, I just go for it. Like the other day when we walked across that bridge over the Truckee River that I never wanted to go across.
It's just a bridge. It's just a normal bridge. It just happens to have some slats in the bridge that you can see down into the water a little bit.
Yeah, and you can see down into the water. And that's part of where scientists think that this fear originates from is when your brain fixates on the environment and takes in information, it tends to take in things within like 20, 30 feet around you. And when there's an expanse of space, it kind of gets really like stuck. It doesn't know quite what to do, and it can lead to a lot of really interesting responses from the body because of that. Like if there's a couple of different situations. So you can be afraid of being up high and enclosed in something, or you can be afraid of being up high in an expansive vista, or you can have both, right? Mm-hmm. So the first one would be like being in an elevator, right. Going up the Atlantis glass elevator.
Yeah, the Atlantis Casino elevator is glass, and I've seen Kris sit down on the floor.
I sat down and faced the silver door and just kind of...
Because she couldn't look behind her or around her at all.
And I needed to be close to the ground, which is kind of a hallmark of, this specific phobia is that kind of dive down to grasp onto something, even though the whole thing is moving.
It's moving, and it's, and you're just as protected as you are as if it was enclosed. There's no difference between the glass and the... But the visual, the sensation, all that stuff. So this goes back to... So go back to your story now. So we were dating very early on. This was like July of like 2011, I'm guessing.
Oh gosh, I don't even know.
July 4th, 2011, I would guess. It was 4th of July party at a friend's house, coworker's house. And you...
everyone went down on the roof.
We were going to climb up on... It was a one-story house, not a big house. Very low.
You're just shaming me.
No, I'm not. I'm just presenting the picture. It was a low house. It was, not like a real high roof. We weren't climbing on the second story.
How low was it? How big of a deal did I make it, Drew?
It was so low you could literally.
It was so like it was tiny low.
So we all decided we could go see the fireworks if we climbed up on the roof, and so we're like, oh man, we're all drunk and we'd been partying all night but I said, oh Kris, let's go up on the roof, and I didn't know how bad her fear of heights was. Do you want to continue, or should I keep going? Sorry, I was I was telling your story for you.
No, I just remember a lot of blurry crying. So you can tell it. I really do.
So we climbed up on that fence, just a regular, wood fence in the side yard that kind of cut across to the...
I'm going to eat my feelings.
That cut across to the roof. And we there was a couple of friends, and we hoisted her up onto the fence. And then she was standing on top of the fence, and then it was really just like maybe 3-4 feet. Like basically throw your leg up onto the roof, and then you could crawl right up onto the roof. And then we all were sitting up there. And I pushed her up like by her butt and got her up, which was super hot because we were still dating early on. So I was pushing her up by her butt up onto the roof, and she got up there and she crawled up to the top, and you could tell right away that this was not a comfortable place for her to watch.
Not okay.
The 4th of July fireworks. This was not going to instill in her the spirit of patriotism watching the 4th of July fireworks from this vantage point, because she was a wreck. She was like laying flat on the roof, and you could see the sweat, and she started crying, and it got worse though when we tried to come down. Getting up wasn't the hardest part, right? And I think that's probably true of most heights things, right? Getting up isn't the worst part. It's the coming down, because you have to look down. And as we were coming down off the roof, I remember just tears and like basically having to like hand you to somebody else to basically grab you and pull you down off the roof. And that was when I realized, oh shit, this isn't just a little bit of a fear of heights. This is a legitimate like panic attack inducing fear.
Yeah, I don't like heights.
Am I right?
Yeah, no, I don't like heights. I don't do them well. I tried to. Like, there's a bridge from Baton Rouge, or from Lafayette to Baton Rouge, that
Louisiana,
I'm already like,
where you went to school.
That I'm already like preparing myself for us to drive across, because I'm very familiar with it.
Because we're going to New Orleans soon, which I think we mentioned last time, which I'm excited about.
And so I'm kind of already.
That's the Chafalaya Basin.
No, it's the bridge that goes over the Mississippi as you get into Baton Rouge.
Oh, a smaller bridge.
Yeah.
But higher.
The Chafalaya Basin Bridge does
low,
not
right?
bother me.
It's right down on the water almost.
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, I mean, if you step out of the car and you look over, yeah, it's going to bother me. But if you're just cruising along, it's just all kind of trees and it looks very serene. So you don't really realize that it's a 26-mile long bridge until you're stuck on it. So
there's a difference between your kind of fear, right, and my kind of fear. So my kind of fear is, I did cable for a couple of years where I installed cable. And part of doing that was climbing up telephone poles and getting up on roofs and doing those kinds of things. And I didn't realize how afraid of heights I was until I started crawling up telephone poles and realizing, like, I would actually intentionally cancel, I was one of those cable guys who probably
canceled on you?
People cussed about, because I would pull up to a house and realize, oh man, I'm going to have to climb that rickety old telephone pole that was probably built in the 1960s.
See, but that seems like a legit fear.
Oh, I think, yeah. I mean, I think there was definitely...
Like, that's literally a concern for your well-being.
But I had coworkers that, they would throw on their spiked boots, and they would just throw on their belt and hike up that thing like it was no big deal, and so I definitely have that kind of fear inside of me, but it's not like I never curled up in a ball and started crying because of it, or had a panic attack, panic, but not a panic attack.
You never took your wife to a World Series game?
Playoff game.
World Series playoff game?
It was a playoff game, not a World Series playoff game.
I'm sorry.
Because those don't exist.
A playoff game. Sorry. I'm tired. This is way past my bedtime. You never took your wife to a playoff game and bought tickets in the freaking nosebleeds and didn't realize that how dang
now who's shaming who?
Deep those were.
I really had no clue. Like, I thought, I did not have any idea.
They shook.
Yeah.
They shook while we went
to AT&T Park to see the Cubs in the playoffs.
It's a beautiful park.
Against the Giants. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful place. But I bought tickets up in the bleachers.
The Giants
up in the
it's a beautiful
upper
park.
deck, and it's so vertical. And if you've ever sat up in a lot of stadiums are built like that now, where they're just very vertical. And when we first got up there, Kris was like, "Oh shit!" Like, she didn't even know she'd get to her seat. She got to her seat, but then basically stayed there the entire time. except for maybe, I think he got up once and it was an extra inning game that we ended up.
It went 18 innings.
No, it didn't.
Wasn't it that one?
12 innings.
12 innings. It felt like 18. I don't know, but it was.
But it was
12 innings.
It was a
too
long
long
game
for me at that height. But one of the things that, as I was doing research for this, I found out was there's this thing called proprioception, and I'm probably saying it a little disjointed, but that's because I'm trying to say it properly. Proprioception, which is the brain's unconscious awareness of where it is at in space at any particular time. So it has to do with the inner ear, the eyes, the sense of touch, smell, and hearing kind of puts everything together. And that's what proprioception is made of in your brain. And so that gets messed up when you're up that high.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your body's sense of where it's at in the world is incorrect because it's like ground down there, me up here. How? Me no fly?
And then there's some people who are like, my brain is telling me I should dive off.
Well, that's the thing too.
So tell me about this phenomenon.
So I'll lead into that. But there's this group online of researchers that did studies on mountain climbers and rock climbers who are afraid of heights and how they conquer that, intensely afraid of heights anywhere else. But when they're rock climbing or
they're
whatever.
fine. But they're fine when they're rock climbing.
Yeah.
But anywhere else, they're afraid of heights?
Yeah. They can't...
That's crazy.
Their brain hasn't learned to overcome it across a variety of situations. So that was really fascinating. I mean, I wanted to look more into that, but...
Now, do they ever want to just dive off the rock when they're rock climbing? Tell us about this phenomenon, because I really want to get to this before we get to our movie.
Oh, man. Okay. So I have to pull up my notes really quick.
This is going to be a longer episode.
In the meantime...
I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But.
In the meantime, a 2012 study from the Brigham Hospital in Boston found that those with phobic anxieties displayed shortened telomeres, which are the little caps that go on your DNA that protect your DNA, which suggests that there's an influence on premature aging related to specific phobias.
Really?
Yes.
So phobias can age you faster.
I mean, stress ages you faster. It's kind of
I guess that
concept,
makes sense.
Okay. So there's this...
Did you not include this in your notes?
I didn't have time to write it all down in handwriting. I don't have a laptop.
I am so disappointed in you.
You and everyone.
You and your notebook. I am really. You're never gonna get into Yale.
You're
never gonna get into Yale this way.
I will never get an honorary degree and speak at a Yale.
No, you can get honorary degrees just for being like an actor.
Oh, okay.
So.
Well,
yeah,
I cannot act,
that.
so let's be real. Okay, anyways. So there's this phenomenon that occurs in high places called the high place phenomenon. And it's this fear that many report when they're up high. They have a fear of being up high because they feel strangely pulled to jump. Not like suicidal. Like these folks, they did studies and, they're
not suicidal in any other area of their life. They're not depressed. They're not...
half and half when they did the study of people with phobic disorders, exactly what you would think of. About half, had suicidal thoughts and the other half hadn't, right? But not all had this MPP, or HPP, I'm sorry, high place phenomenon. They feel like they might lose control of themselves and just...
So you're standing,
wander off.
You're going, you and your family, you pull up in your station wagon, you're at the Grand Canyon, and you're like, Ma, bring the kids, let's go walk out to the edge. And you get out to the edge, and all of a sudden they have this sensation that they want to dive off of the cliff.
Just to walk off, to leap off of it, to jump off of the staircase, to jump off of the Grand Canyon.
And so that's the basis of their fear of heights, is that they worry that they want to, that they're going to want to...
That they will not be able to restrain that feeling.
To keep from jumping off.
Because we talked about that's the fear of high places and the physical sensations that occur in response to high places, right? So think of the physical sensation of feeling pulled to jump off of somewhere that if you did, you would be badly injured.
That's crazy.
It's very counterintuitive.
I can see it, though. I mean, I can see the draw to just want to, like, man, what would it be like to just... fly off of this very high spot.
So Kierkegaard, way back when, obviously this is not something that is new. I know you do. This is not something that's a new sensation that has been reported. This is something that in the 19th century, he spoke about in his book, The Concept of Anxiety. He said, "He whose eyes happen to look down into the yawning abyss becomes dizzy. But what is the reason for this? It is just as much in his own eyes and in the abyss. Hence, anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." So, I mean, that's really deep. But scientists,
I like it.
Scientists now point to a cognitive dissonance between two systems in the brain. You feel kind of slightly off balance and your body seeks to right itself. And yet your brain gets confused because there's no real off balance or danger. So then there's this conflicting message because you're not falling. And in fact, you're probably not close enough to the edge to fall. So why is your body trying to correct itself and sending me all these signals to like back away or to jump towards to kind of resolve that? So yeah, they say that feeling, as far as they can tell, is the result of that miscommunication. And it's confusingly triggered by the desire not to fall.
The brain is a fucked up place. And we're going to learn that more and more and more as we dig into these phobias. Just how messed up your brain is, folks. Like your brain is a really scary, dangerous place. There's all kinds of crazy shit that's going on in there.
What's really crazy is that phobias occur, across barriers, across cultural barriers, all that kind of stuff. So the French even have a word for this. Do you remember what the word was?
No, what was it? I know you told me.
I don't know if I can speak French. L'appel du vide, which means the call of the void.
I like that. That's so good. That would have related a lot to our last episode too, I think.
I know.
That whole darkness
the
concept.
Call of the darkness, the call of the void,
right? Wanting to dive into that. That's so interesting. I think I have some French I have to pronounce soon too.
Yes, you do.
I'm not very excited about either. Let's dig into our movie, right?
Okay.
Our whole concept here is that we are talking about phobias. We're gonna dive in and do some dissecting of these super fascinating, interesting phobias, this crazy shit that goes on in our brain, and then we're going to transition into a movie. At first we talked about movies, which I'm guessing we'll probably at times mix it up with a few different movies. In the first episode, I couldn't freaking land on a movie to save my life because it was such a broad phobia. But this one we've got a good one. So we're gonna talk about. There was a few movies that I had some scenes in mind, and some of them weren't horror movies. I was thinking like Die Hard, right? There's the scene like on top of Nakatomi Tower where is hanging off and all that crazy shit. Like there's a lot of action movies that have some really height, fear, anxiety provoking scenes. But in surprisingly in horror movies there's not a ton. There's not a whole lot of them. I thought about Stand By Me, which is a Stephen King short, so I guess it's horror adjacent, right? And the scene on the
I'll allow it.
On the bridge,
yeah,
right?
With the bridge scene is terrifying.
With the train and all that kind of stuff, like that's terrifying. That's a terrifying fear of heights type of scene. But no movie was even close, in my opinion, to capturing kind of
your James Stewart bias.
The whole shut up. To capturing the whole concept of acrophobia and literally about a character that suffers from acrophobia than Alfred Hitchcock's 1958 Vertigo. Vertigo is a perfect movie to pair with this phobia, right? He literally defines his phobia in the first
5 minutes.
10 minutes,
yeah.
right? 5-10 minutes.
I had to quit.
Why?
because of this fear of heights I have, this acrophobia. I wake up at night seeing that man fall from the roof, and I try to reach out to him. It's just...
It wasn't your fault.
I know, that's what everybody tells me.
Johnny, the doctors explained to you.
I know. I have acrophobia, which gives me vertigo, and I get dizzy. Boy, what a moment to find out I had it.
Well, you got it, and there's no losing it. And there's no one to blame. So why quit?
You mean to sit behind a desk, chairborne?
Where you belong.
What about my acrophobia? What about... Now, suppose I'm sitting in this chair behind the desk. Here's the desk. And a pencil falls from the desk down to the floor. I reach down to pick up the pencil. Bingo, my acrophobia is back.
Oh, Johnny, oh.
And because so the story goes that Jimmy Stewart's the star, and by the way, I am a huge Jimmy Stewart fan, so
He has a boner for Jimmy Stewart.
I freaking love Jimmy Stewart. It's a Wonderful Life is my favorite movie of all time. I think anything that Jimmy Stewart's in, and I love his Hitchcock movies, Rear Window and Rope, and Jimmy Stewart is awesome. So
Jimmy Stewart,
the fact that this movie fell into this second episode, it just is my favorite thing in the world.
It seemed to really energize you.
I was very excited. And so in this movie, Jimmy Stewart stars as a former police detective, John Scotty Ferguson, and Scotty is forced into early retirement because an incident in the line of duty has caused him to develop acrophobia. And basically it's him hanging off of a building in the beginning, and he watches this other police officer very poorly try to save him. Like, the guy just basically bends over and just tumbles off the
Hitchcock
building.
Doesn't like it when you point out the flaws.
Hitchcock had a lot of flaws, there's no doubt, but he was a genius too. But the guy goes tumbling over the edge, and Jimmy Stewart's character, looks over and looks down and sees this guy pummel to his death. And then we see this amazing, what's called dolly zoom, which was Hitchcock's, which was first used in Vertigo, and later it was used in Jaws. It was used in Goodfellas. It was used in a lot of big movies, and it was a camera technique that basically disoriented you and made it look like the ground was farther away or something was disoriented, in the distance. And in Vertigo, it was used expertly. It was such a cool effect. So he looks down, he sees the ground kind of all wobbly and gets this vertigo, right? And vertigo is different than acrophobia, right? Vertigo is a symptom,
right,
correct?
Or a set of symptoms that often occur simultaneously with acrophobia.
Right. So it's basically a disorienting kind of tunnel vision-y kind of spinning. It's a spinning effect, right? Where everything kind of spins around you. And so that's kind of the basis of his acrophobia. So Jimmy Stewart then goes along, and he's got this extreme fear of heights now, and this rotational kind of spinning vertigo. And then Scotty is then hired by an acquaintance of his, an old friend from college, that hires him to go follow what he thinks is his wife. Spoiler alert, by the way. We're going to spoil movies all over the place in this podcast, just so everybody knows. And he follows her for a while, and then ends up falling in love with her. And then there's this scene where they end up at the top of a bell tower at I believe it's the San Juan Bautista Mission in San Francisco, because it all takes place in the Bay Area in San Francisco. And he's chasing this woman up a staircase, and they get to the top. She gets to the top. He can't make it because all of a sudden he starts getting his symptoms of his acrophobia again, right? He starts seeing things, and that Alfred Hitchcock dolly zoom starts coming in, and we see him freaking out.
Which is really disorienting.
Oh,
for
it's
me
so
too.
I bet watching it.
I don't like it.
And anyways, so she ends up dying or jumping off the top of the bell tower, and he realizes that it's his failure and his phobia that has caused the death of this woman, because he wasn't able to go up and rescue her before she committed suicide or dove off the thing. And then we go into this whole mistaken identity, Alfred Hitchcock twist type deal. And then ultimately at the end, he's so filled with rage because of what he finds out at the end of the movie that he basically overcomes his acrophobia in the end by kind kind of this seething revenge kind of feeling that he has inside of him. But what's so cool about this movie is it really is so centered on the fact that he has this debilitating thing that came about from a traumatic experience, right? Jimmy Stewart has this thing that came about because of this thing that happened in the line of duty, and it has affected now his whole life, right? And I made Kris watch it, start to finish. So we literally just finished watching it. And I love this movie too. I actually had a poster of Vertigo in my apartment when I was like 22, maybe 21. I loved, because I'm a big Hitchcock fan, and this was to me one of, it's one of my top 3 Hitchcock movies for sure. But what'd you think? What'd you think of the way that they painted this picture of this guy suffering from this phobia in Vertigo?
I mean, I thought it was accurate how debilitating it can get with just one glance out, over the stairs, that it can change everything for him.
Well, think about the scene. Think about the scene in the beginning, right, where he's got his college gal pal that I guess at one point they were engaged, and he's describing his acrophobia to her, and he's recovering from his accident, and he says, "You know what? I'll just get up right up there on that. I'll get up on that there stool, and I'll just gradually work my way up, and I'll be fine." That's my Jimmy Stewart, by the way. And so he gets up on the stool.
Would be proud.
And he gets up on the stool, right? And he's like, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm good. No problem. This is the greatest thing in the world. I'll just work my way up. Hell, I'll go buy myself a ladder." And he starts going up the stool, right? And he gets to the second, third rung, and then he gets to the top rung of the 3-rung stool, and he looks out the window. Mm-hmm. He makes the mistake of looking out the window instead of just being present where he is. He sees out the window and looks down the alley, and all of a sudden,
it throws everything off.
He basically passes out, into her
Which
arms.
is the last thing that your body should want to do, aside from jumping off of it. The last thing your body should want to do is pass out in a situation where you're looking over the edge of something.
Right.
So again, it's another.
It's because it's in your head. It's like mental. It's not fight or flight, though, really, is it? I mean, because ultimately your brain isn't telling yourself what reality is.
No, it's like a confusion of fight or flight. I mean, unless you're in a situation where it actually is dangerous, then it's not considered phobic. It's just, I'm up somewhere where it's really dangerous. Remember, phobia is over time. It keeps happening. It keeps worsening. We're talking those kinds of levels where it really affects you, like me. And yeah, at that kind of a level, what was I talking about?
Well, so and to bring it back to where he was talking about the stool thing, right? Where he was gradually moving up. You mentioned that really is the best way to conquer phobias, right? Is immersion therapy is a big deal when it comes to how to help people.
It's not immersion therapy. It's experiential or.
Well, they do immersion for certain things too, though, right?
Certain things,
like spiders, and when they gradually introduce those things.
Well, that's not immersion. Well, that's not gradual, I should say. That's immersion. That's just tossing you in. Right. In a well-executed program, it'll be a lot of retraining cognitively, your ideas about what's happening, retraining the brain to think about the situation differently and to kind of get on the same page. That way there's not that like cognitive dissonance disconnect that occurs. Mm-hmm. And then the experiential therapy, this is one of the only phobias that I can find that has had any research on virtual reality therapy, using virtual reality to help folks with these phobias work through their fears in a truly safe way and be able to translate that to real life experience.
So you're able to get into a virtual reality situation where you're climbing stairs or getting on top of, or getting on top of a ladder or whatever.
Everything is graduated.
But you're in a safe space.
Little by little, you learn grounding techniques to help ground your anxiety so that you can manage it better. Because it's a natural response with an irrational level of response. So you kind of learn to manage that. If you've got some trauma associated with it, you have to address the trauma and kind of process through that in a lot of different ways. But virtual reality therapy, that's one of the things that can really help folks with a truly debilitating fear.
So Jimmy Stewart had it right. He just
had it right. Yeah.
He just didn't have the proper environment to
and someone
work,
to guide him.
Properly.
Someone to help remind him of the tools that he's acquired to be able to manage these fears in these situations and to manage the brain's response to these situations.
So Alfred Hitchcock, one of the things that I was, as I was researching this and looking into Hitchcock, loved scaring the shit out of you by putting people in situations where they're at high places, right? He loved this heights kind of concept. Even going back to like 1940, he did a movie called Foreign Correspondent, where there's a guy hanging, Joel McCrea, I believe is his name, is hanging onto the side of a windmill. In Saboteur in 1942, there's a struggle. There's this big epic scene, and there's a struggle at the top of the Statue of Liberty, where the villain ends up hanging from the side of the Statue of Liberty, and there's this insane scene. Like,
Die Hard.
Like, right? It's like this iconic scene of this guy hanging off the side of the Statue of Liberty by one hand, and then the good guy kind of grabs him to try to help him, but then he slips out of his grasp, and the guy falls from the Statue of Liberty to his death, below. Mm-hmm. And then really famously in North by Northwest, which actually came after Vertigo, there's a scene with Cary Grant and Eva Marie Saint where they're being chased through woods, and they get to this point where they can't run anymore, and they realize they're at the top of Mount Rushmore, and they're standing crazy, top of the heads of the presidents, and they end up having to climb down the heads of the presidents, hanging on for dear life, at a couple of spots, and then looking down below them and seeing the ground way down below. So Hitchcock really, really liked to use this concept, and which is funny because, like I said, horror movies haven't really used the fear of heights all that much. You don't see it.
It's a very common fear.
Yeah, and you would think it would be used more often. And Hitchcock, and Hitchcock in general, loved to prey on our psychological issues. And there was a lot of Freudian stuff with Alfred Hitchcock too. And in fact, he once said that the best way to get rid of my fears is to make films about them. Mm-hmm. So it makes you wonder what kind of psychological issues he had going on. We clearly know he had some Oedipus stuff going on. There was some Oedipal stuff going on with Hitchcock, no doubt. We see it in Psycho. We see it in the way that he treated his female leads. We see it in so many different areas in the way that he talked about femininity and versus masculinity, and there's a lot of problems there in the way that he did his movies. But you can see his pathological kind of psychological issues kind of flowing through those things, don't you think?
That's also why he was so creatively brilliant and able to hit home on so many of our tenderest places in terms of our fears.
He tapped into them, right? He tapped into that psychology. He tapped into our innate kind of fears on a level that I think that directors had never, definitely before him, had never really done before. He certainly hit on things in all of his movies that were, these types of things, these phobias, these things that make us more afraid in our brains than traditional horror, right? It wasn't some slasher.
Monsters. He didn't have a lot of creatures. It was the creature that looks just like me, the mm-hmm. human, or it was the normal creatures around me. Suddenly they turn, or I'm sure you could go on with a million examples.
Well, Psycho, right? I mean, the most iconic scene in Psycho. If you ask people, right?
Shower scene.
If you ask people about the shower scene, they will tell you they saw Janet Leigh getting stabbed. They saw the knife going into her skin. It never happened. That whole scene was all him using that the way that he did his camera, the way he did everything, it was all in your head. You never saw the actual murder. You saw the blood. You saw, shadows.
But
you
your
saw all
brain
kinds of stuff.
filled in the
But your brain filled in the gaps, right? There's a similar scene in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. All those things are
to show
psychological.
you how badly our brain fills in the gaps.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the point is that I think he definitely used these types of fears, right? Like the fear of heights is a fear that again, you said 5% have a clinical phobia, but there's probably 70% that have like a genuine don't like to stand on the edge of a cliff.
In any movie theater, at least 70% of that room will get uncomfortable at the
if
thought.
they see that, if they saw that.
And if you can just set somebody a little on edge, you've done good work so far. Now you just have to build to the crescendo.
Well, I recommend reading. There was a really good article in Psychology Today, which is one of Kris's favorite publications, about Vertigo specifically, called The Most Psychological Film of All Time. And so I would recommend checking that out. We'll post it up on our Facebook page and link you back to that. I think it's a really cool article. It basically goes into why Vertigo is now considered. It's actually now considered by a number of big critic lists as the greatest film of all time. It actually in Sight and Sound, which was a big British film magazine, it overtook Citizen Kane about 6 years ago as considered the greatest film of all time. So there's something there. There's something that in his filmmaking and the way that he created these scenes of just terror, where Jimmy Stewart is experiencing these just crazy phenomena, right?
When you talk about Jimmy Stewart,
it's just so high up here. I'm just so scared of the heights.
Oh.
I'm so scared. I'm gonna fall.
Oh, Madeline,
Madeline, come here, Madeline.
I'm not Madeline. Yeah, that got real.
You're Judy. I'm Madeline, Judy.
Carlotta.
Oh, now you look like Madeline.
Madeline, Carlotta, Judy. She was 3.
It gets a little confusing.
No, it was really weird. And then he got really obsessive, and they got very uncomfortable there for a little bit. No, Jimmy Stewart. No means no.
You know what's funny is
you don't dress people up like your dead ex.
That's the only way that he could touch her, was if he looked like the dead girl.
Hitchcock talked about tapping into his own feelings about necrophilia in this movie. So there you go. That's gross.
On that note, once again, bringing it back around.
This is what I do, bro. You've been married to me for 5 years. You should know this.
We went 15 minutes longer than episode number 1. Does that mean we're doing better or worse?
We went longer, but was it good?
I don't know. I feel better about it. I feel like...
See, I feel
more
about it.
I feel more focused.
I feel like
You wouldn't feel good about it no matter what. That's just
true.
you. So
yeah.
We'll let our 4 listeners send us text messages to give us more critiques, which we definitely appreciated.
Yes, it was so
thanks,
helpful.
Kris. Thanks,
Metal
Tori.
Metal Kris.
Thanks, Metal
and
Kris.
Tori.
Thanks, Tori. Thanks, Billy. We got a few.
What about your cousin?
If you got my cousin Brent. Brent will be listening.
Billy.
We actually got 2 people that I didn't know that actually got on our Facebook page today.
Thanks to those people. Thank you, 2 people. You know who you are.
If you ever end up listening to the podcast, we appreciate that. And by the way, we are on officially. We're on Anchor, because that's where we host our podcast out of. But we got approved on Pocket Casts, as well as Stitcher. So those are the 3 services that we are on currently, but you can always go to someofallfearpodcast.com, and on someofallfearpodcast.com we'll post a new article posting of the latest episode, and then if you click on podcast, it'll have the latest podcast automatically uploaded there from Anchor through our RSS feed, so you can always check it out there, and also check out our Facebook page. We just started a Facebook page, Facebook/SomeOfAllFearPodcast. And then we are also on Twitter at SomeOfAllFearPod, POD. So check us out there and follow us. That one I already had that one established under a different name, so we got a few followers on there, and I follow a lot of my podcasts.
You're so good with the social media. Thank you.
Through Twitter. Heck yeah. So let's end it on that note. What do you think?
Sounds good.
I had fun. Do you remember your sign-off line?
I do.
What is it? All
right. Be kind to each other, everyone, and stay afraid. Stay very afraid.
Bye, guys.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.